Pardon me? Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Council for Human Services. It is Thursday, June 26, 2025, and it is now 12:12 p.m. This is Veronica Bolchick, Chair, and before we start, this meeting is being held in hybrid fashion. All votes will be taken by roll call and Zoom participation. And we have some folks here in the trailer, so we're exercising that hybrid fashion, so thank you. Let's establish quorum. So I see up on the screen first, Sue Minthinen.
Present.
Tara Steering.
Here.
Sarah Wright.
Here.
In the trailer here, we have Amanda Wright.
Here.
And myself, Veronica Bolchick, so we do have a quorum. Also in the trailer, we have Alexandria Richards, who is our host today and will be also taking notes. Jericho is at a conference on the Cape and he was going to try to jump on, but the timing didn't line up for him, so he sends his regrets. And Suzanne Keating also sent her regards that she could not make it today. And I do want to thank everyone for adjusting their time and doing this at noon. It just worked better, and you know, maybe at future we can talk about different timing for the group, but I do appreciate people adjusting their schedules today. So next on the agenda is acceptance of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
Aye.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Sue,
Aye.
Tara,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
and myself. So we've got our agenda. Next item is approval of minutes from 5/22/25. You should have had those in an attachment. Can I have a motion on the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
All right, by roll call, Sue,
Aye.
Tara,
Aye.
Suzanne. Oh, excuse me,
Amanda.
Amanda,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
did we get you? And myself, Veronica. Did I get everyone? I'm sorry. Okay. And thank you, Lexi, for getting those minutes out. Very much appreciated. Public comment, I don't see anyone on from the public, and there's no one in the trailer here, so we will move on. So next on the item on the agenda is, we spoke about this last time, and over the next month or so, this will be pulled together a little more, but on September 12th, and I believe the time we've set is 10 a.m. Mariah Mitchell has offered us their outdoor space, the tent that is down on Washington Street. We will be hosting a basically an announcement, but just a almost a celebration for the folks that were awarded grants for the fiscal year 26, which starts on July 1st. So everyone will be receiving an invitation, and what we're going to be asking is for the folks that are attending, representing the organizations, to give a brief, and I think we're not even talking, less than 5 minute overview of what you'll be doing with the money and how that is going. And this is all part of what we're trying to do, of better public relations and, even branding for the money that the town does provide. We've also asked that in any, the contracts that, and unfortunately, I don't have Jericho here to let us know, but maybe Lexi, if, I know the contracts are being prepared, if they're all not, have they been?
I don't believe they've been sent out yet. I haven't seen it. Jericho usually would send it to me to, I'm not sure if it's been sent out actually.
Okay, so, but the contracts should be out by the first, which
Yeah.
is, Tuesday. So, in any advertising material that the organizations are doing, it's part of the contract. The town logo goes on to that also, just as a partial funder or a funder of the program. So doing a little celebration, and, I believe we're gonna have Lemon Press provide their breakfast boxes for us, and, you know, as opposed to doing it here in the trailer. Mariah Mitchell has donated their outdoor space for us that morning. And, it is under a tent, so hopefully it's not inclement weather, and I guess only if it's a hurricane blowing through there, we should be fine for that. So I assume it's 10 to 12 on that, on the 12th, and I would like to invite this entire committee to attend. You know, as we are moving toward, coordination and, development of the two, different groups. I think it would be a great idea if people can get that on their calendars, and, I know that we're gonna be sending out a save the date, and it will also then come with an invitation and an RSVP, so we know the numbers. So, I'm asking Lexi to make notes of that, and, you know, for those invitations to include the Council for Human Services. Any questions on that?
Veronica, can you restate the date and the time? I think I heard you say July 10th?
Oh,
No.
no, September 12th at 10 a.m.
Okay, that's why, because July 10th seemed really way too soon.
Right,
Okay.
and if you said July 10th, I apologize.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sure you did not. Okay, September 12th at 10
And
a.m.
it's a
Oh,
Friday,
great.
it's a Friday morning and 10 a.m., 10 to
Okay.
noon on that
Thank
day.
you.
And, you know, I think it will also, it'll be good for everyone, because we'll hear in person, and, you know, most of these organizations will have already started using the monies and, their programs. So, you know, we'll get a little bit of a update on what they're doing, et cetera. So, thank you. All right. If there's no other questions on that, Tara?
Yeah, are we based upon sort of the RSVP from the organization's gonna kind of create a schedule and sort of say to them, you've got like 10 minutes each, like that kind of thing?
I think when we, for the, yes, that they should know when they're on, and, it'll be who will be attending, and, that they'll have the parameter that it is, you know, it's not a full interview, whatever, it's just, you know, let us know what's happening. And I believe the other thing we will do is we'll create some type of a certificate that we will give to them also as, just a recognition. So just
Right.
trying to, and if there's any other suggestions on this, just trying to, advertise what we do and what the town provides, but also it's additional advertising for the great programs that are funded with, partially funded or fully funded by the tax dollars.
Would you ever invite the community? I mean, not that you want a lot of people, but just so people know like what work's being done and the need for funding.
You know, for this, it's not gonna be, inviting the community,
Yeah.
because we're also providing breakfast, and I hate to say,
No,
you know, but
yeah.
there's very limited budget for this. extremely limited budget, but, this is our first, I've had a thought in my head that this really should be done at Fairground Roads. Fairground Road in the auditorium, and maybe that'll be the next time doing that. I'm thinking of, I've been to the presentations that are done by the Worcester Polytech Institute students, the WPI students that are here during October through December. They work on projects for not-for-profits, for the town, number of different things, and their culminating activity is to present to the public and the organization. So that's something that it's big enough that we could maybe next time do it there. But it's a good idea, you know, just you know, I believe I'm gonna have to check with Jericho on this, if it will be recorded.
That's why I was gonna ask if there was a way to, you know, kind of sort of publicize it after the fact or something like that too.
I
Right,
think, Joanna had mentioned that they do have capabilities to do a
capabilities.
Zoom or something.
Right, and what I'm just realizing, because we cannot violate quorum, it will probably be an official meeting of both organizations, both groups. So having it that it will be able to be shown on YouTube, the town channel at a later date, that should follow. But we'll make note of that. Alrighty. So with no other questions on that, but mark your calendars, and I hope everyone will be able to attend. I don't know if we'd be able to have a Zoom, and that, let's see, if it is being recorded.
I think it would have to be on Zoom.
Have to be on Zoom, so, but we're gonna have to see how that would be set up to happen on that day. But to be determined, okay. Next item on the agenda is the opiate grant process. So Sue, you can help me on this one. We do have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 AM, which is just a completely Zoom meeting to do the deliberations. We had a couple of weeks ago interviews with the organizations. There were 2 that applied for the treatment portion, and 3 that applied for the prevention portion of the $55,000. So it was 20,000 for prevention and
35.
35 on treatment. So the committee has completed their everyone participated in the interviews, and they've completed the rubric, and I believe that Lexi
Yeah, I have
has
them all.
everyone, and so all done ahead of time, and tomorrow morning we will get that, and that'll be part of a piece of the deliberations, but by tomorrow morning, we should have it all settled, and I realize that it doesn't have to, that money is on a different, comes from a different bucket. So it isn't on the fiscal year, but within the next week or so, that will be, you know, implemented also. The money should become available. So that's where we stand with that, and I don't know, and this is where Jericho would know if this is going to be an ongoing thing. I know that the money for this has come from bits and pieces of small amounts of money that we've gotten over the past period of time that finance has been putting aside, and they wanted it to be a critical mass before we did this process. because to, get $2,000 and do a grant, et cetera, it just is cumbersome on all sides. So I don't know if this money is gonna continue. A lot of this money is, from the opiate, settlement, the Sackler, settlement that has brought this to us. So, we could be doing this again next year, or maybe it'll be 2 years, but it is completely separate bucket of money. It is not town taxpayer dollars in this at all. So moving on, the status of the needs assessment, and I'm gonna turn this over to Tara. Because Suzanne's not here and Jericho, so if you can run with this.
So interesting thing that actually happened was in the after the review of the 10, we came down, we'd actually come down to 3, but then we found out after the fact that we actually needed to, in the interview process, that we had to actually interview 4. So the top 4 that we had reviewed and chosen. And interestingly enough, it was the 4th and last one that we ended up adding in that ultimately after our personal conversations and our Zoom conversation with the organization, that's the one that we ended up choosing. So it's very interesting. The process has not yet been completed. I actually got a note from Cindy this morning that said it's still being worked on. It's in process. They have to do a consensus evaluation right now where all the comments are being accumulated. And so we are not quite there yet, but it was a very, very thorough process. It was very time consuming, but very interesting. And it was really interesting how requiring that last group, and then that last group was actually who we came to consensus to choose. So we did not have access to the budgets that were proposed. Those were going to be open to Cindy and Brian and Jericho, and then they were going to look and see if there was, real inconsistency in the budgets that were proposed, and if it would sort of, we would go back and try to negotiate, or if it was so prohibitive that we would knock a group out. So that still seems to be ongoing. It looks like hopefully we should have everything that they need to be completed, and I hope we'll have something next week.
Okay. I assume that the process and the fact that the budgets were removed from the deliberations,
Yeah.
that is set by the finance
Yes.
director and the rules that they go by.
Yes. So it was almost like to not bias us by looking at the budget. I would assume that that's probably part of the rules, regulations.
Very interesting, and thank you for the time devoted to do this. It sounds like it was a valuable experience, but also valuable for the town also ultimately, so.
Yeah, the group
and
was very thorough. I mean, the group was amazingly thorough. We worked, it was a really great process because some of these applications were 50, 60 pages long, and everybody really did their work, really dove in and had really salient points when there wasn't consensus on things, and it was a really good process.
And who all was on the committee? Yourself and Suzanne from
Yeah.
this group,
And then,
Jericho, Lexi,
Jericho. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah, and Brian, finance.
Tim.
Tim. Why am I saying Brian? Brian's the person who's dealing with the rules, right? And Tim.
Okay, so Brian wasn't, but
No,
Tim
yeah, Tim.
Yeah,
and Cindy is.
Cindy was more like the tech, she
she
didn't.
was sort of the
participate.
coordinator, yeah.
Okay, is she from the finance
Yes.
department?
Yeah, she's in the same procurement with Tim.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, interesting too, to get, the balance of finance with, human services. So sounds like it worked,
yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Fred. Any questions? And I assume that once this is all done, they're ready to hit the ground running? Is that part
Yes.
of whatever, so,
Yeah, most of the organizations had actually done a fair amount of work, and that was actually part of our process of reviewing is whether or not they'd actually done homework to
Right.
be able to, really understand the need, dive in deep to what information was already readily available in the public, and then also be able to really hit the ground running. And again, one of the factors that we really looked at was how many projects do they have that are ongoing right now, and whether or not they could really meet our timeline. So that that was a big part of it.
if they have the staffing available for us.
Staffing, linguistics, all kinds of different things.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anxious to see this get going. So, I know it's takes a while, but thank you very much, for your update, and, we'll, keep our ears to the ground to see what comes next. Mhm. So on to the next item is, the status of funding for fiscal year 27. So we've had some conversation with how to approach to ask for more funding and sustained funding from the town. The funding level at 650,000 and 175 has been in place for at least 5 years and probably even longer than that. And, we know that the needs are out there, and we can't just necessarily say what request we get matches what the need is. And, unfortunately, and I keep using this term, one of Jericho, so Jericho's here in spirit. We're changing the tires as we're riding the bike down the road. Because we have to keep moving forward, even as the needs assessment needs to get done. We can't wait for that to approach next year because just the whole funding cycle for fiscal year 27, we have gotten word that they want the final recommendations. At this point, it has been in March. We typically have a meeting with the finance committee. They want that earlier. So we want to start this whole cycle much earlier. And we'd like to start it with knowing how much money we have. So it comes down to making this request. We have spent time with town administration, and we know how the request should go through. It doesn't necessarily go to the finance committee, but it really needs to go to the town manager to start and to the head of finance. So in the CRC meetings, we've had some discussion of how to approach this asking. And what has been discussed is we look at it as a multi-year plan, that we ask for money for 27, and this is what we would like for 28 and 29. And, the way that this is going to start is Jericho and I, need to be sitting down and actually writing this letter. And then the letter will get approved. And what I'm gonna make a recommendation is that this group, becomes part of that approval process for the funding. And this is sort of like trying to bring these two groups together as we move forward. So, at our next meeting, that letter will be ready for, a formal adoption. And it'll be adopted by both of the committees at this point, and then it will start that process. So by the end of July, we want to get this in the process. We were told that we could not do this until July 1st, because until July 1st happens, they're ending up last year, and now they'll start looking at fiscal year 27. So, at our next meeting, there'll be something for everyone to review and, add to, et cetera, and then we can adopt it, and then it'll move on. We know that the two separate buckets of the human services, which has been 650, and then the substance, misuse has been 175. The, origin of that 175 is changing. So what I think we're approaching this, that even though the source of the money will be changing, we're looking at least for 27 to have level funding, meaning it's the 650 and the 175, and it's potentially gonna be asking for more for that first year and then moving forward. But because the nature of the money is different, when this started at that 175, it was coming from the, elaborate taxing that is done on cannabis sales on the island, and that's been ruled to be, not appropriate, by the state. So, but we've been assured that, from finance that, you know, that still will be funded, but it's just being funded from different sources. So, I know minimally, we're gonna be asking for level funding and maybe even more for the first year, but we also know that it's a big balance with the town budget in total. And it's a very difficult thing because we all see the need. And we know that the need is great, but, and it somewhat is, concerning, because what we are asking for is like this compared to the infrastructure of the island that, you know, and everyone has, needs, but we have to fight for more for our portion. And we know that our portion is small, but we can't just ask for this because we don't want to be turned down. So we're trying to balance this. What can we ask for that we know? And we think the approach is by doing a multi-year, you know, is to show that we're looking forward, and, you know, even if it's not a commitment for those years, but it lays out a map. So that's our reasoning, you know, for that. We also have had discussion on somehow doing an emergency fund, having somehow emergency funds available. And I'm not quite sure how we're gonna approach that, but we do know that, just what's happened in the last, 6 months, if not even 6 months, has affected a number of organizations, a number of services that are provided by multiple organizations. And we don't know what's happening, but we know that the need on the island has not changed. So when people were promised money potentially from other sources and now they're told that's not happening, it doesn't mean that people can't eat, people can't be, receive medical services, etc. So we'd like to see if we could have access to like an emergency fund that potentially, an organization may be able to come to us. And it's, I know that we have to follow procedures, etc. And, Tara, just, what you've described as the procurement for hiring a vendor, we're not as nimble as other organizations. Luckily, the Community Foundation, they're much more nimble than we can, and they've been able to increase some funding. So we're trying to think of how we can provide something as an emergency fund. Sue, do you have anything more to add to that?
I think you covered most of it, or possibly all of it. But yeah, I think building this idea that as the economy changes, as the island changes, the needs are only growing, and to have this static amount of money to give out is is not helpful. It doesn't meet the needs of the community.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
need to, and that's why we want to do this, the project of the needs assessment. We need some data to back us up. And I think we'll have a compelling case.
Sarah's your hand up?
Yeah, so just to jump on to what Sue just said, I have a comment and a question, echoing what you said, Sue, because I think the town hasn't done this needs assessment in quite some time. So it's great that it's happening again now, like there's a concrete plan for that. But it seems like that data will still follow this process. So we're catching up, but we're still gonna be like a step or two behind. And so I think overlaying your other observation of everyone's concerns about how the economy is changing and the political environment is what it is and so forth. I assume that other aspects of the town's finances are adjusted for inflation. I feel like if this budget were adjusted for inflation, just leaving the opioid settlement money out of it, we'd be looking at, I just did a quick little calculation here, like almost $770,000 just to start. So if we could start there and, make the case that other parts of the town, like this is a standard thing, I believe. I'm not the expert. The finance committee can certainly tell us more about that, no doubt, but taken together, I think we're making good progress. We're going in the right direction. But and I do support the idea of an emergency fund too. I think that's very planful. So I think we're doing all the right things, and we just really have to, I think message this, right? That's what we're trying to do next.
Right. And the calculation you did, we've talked about that also. So we think that it's about a 15% inflation over that time since the money has been the same, because inflation has affected everything. So it'll be, I think we're trying to balance that. We know that we need more. We know that we have to ask for more, but we also don't. There's a number of different ways of looking at it, you know, either you ask for the moon or the stars, and then when you come in between, then everyone's happy, you know, that no one's gonna get what they want, so you negotiate. Or we approach it that it's stepped and we know that we need to do this, but I think that the needs assessment, unfortunately, because things take time, it would have been wonderful if we had that done already, but even when it was decided we would have that, it takes time to, it just, unfortunately, we're part of a bureaucracy, so we have to move things as quickly as we can, but we have to follow along, so, Tara?
I wonder if part of the conversation could also be, I know when we talk to our organizations, we often ask the question when somebody's requesting funds, what happens to this program if you're not funded? And I wonder if we could collect that information a little bit from prior reviews to go back and say, this would have not happened, or this did not happen as a result of not having funding. And, and use that as kind of a powerful influence to, the conversation about, making sure we have that emergency funding. Because my concern is that the town is really looking at this like, okay, many of these organizations, particularly larger ones, may have benefactors, board members that will create that rainy day backdrop, fund, but that's not the case for everybody. And it's certainly not the case for some programs or some activities that are not deemed to be particularly a priority by, the organization's, benefactors or their board members, but it's actually incredibly important to the community. So I'm wondering, I always feel like pushing back with data is a good way to approach it and say, well, look, when we interviewed these organizations, we asked them, what happens if we don't get this funding? Well, was the program cut? Was it cut by 1%? How many people were not able to get services? I just, even this morning, getting an email from Pip and Anchor and seeing, well, they feed 80 families, but they have 100 families on the waiting list. Well, that's the data that we should collect and go back to the town and say, these are the reasons why this is so necessary, not just to have the fund, but to look at the increases in the inflation costs.
Yeah. Amanda has,
Yes, I agree with everything that you've all said. Another thing I was thinking about is that if we ask the organizations where they're seeing organizations that are looking for funding through the state, et cetera, and are not getting that funding.
Oh,
I think having that data as well, because I
Yeah.
was talking to an organization the other day that was hoping to get $60,000 from a state organization. They ended up getting 10, and they really needed the 60. And so I think it'd just be interesting. A lot of people have already experienced, this. So I think to be able to have that data added on to the other information would be really helpful and prove our point. We need more money.
Yeah.
I know that when we go through the, for our grants, the application, we do ask everyone, what happens if we cannot fund or cannot fund for the level? And, many will say they just have to cut back on services, and we also look as part of the application process is where else are they getting money from? So
Yeah.
us what grants they've applied for, what grants they've received, what their funding sources are. And we do have some organizations that we fund that, you know, we're the only thing that they have. Or we have some that may have a larger benefactor. You know, whether it is through a major fundraising thing or whether they have access to other funds. So it all becomes part of that balance, but it would be interesting to have the data of like you were, because we definitely needed to cut back on every single request that we received. We did not have enough money to fully fund anybody.
Yeah.
So to get that data, potentially, so, we'd have to go back at the applications and maybe, ask again. Because now that they know what money has come in, how has their, financials changed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you start out with a budget and a plan, and then you get smacked in the face with reality, you still need to function, but it may mean that something gets cut and when does it meet a critical mass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. You know, it's, I don't necessarily see that things are gonna necessarily change to a positive. I think there's gonna be external factors that are continuing, and we don't even know what else is on the horizon, unfortunately. So, the only thing that we have somewhat control over is our very local, what we do. So, that's where we are, so. Thank you for those additional comments because. It all has to be mushed and put together and presented as a organized request. So. Stay tuned and we will have this discussion next month and continue with that. Anyway, it's I guess I'm waiting for the ray of sunshine to come in and I think we have to create our own light is what it comes down to. The next thing on our agenda, if there's no more discussion in that area, is the continued discussion of CHC and CRC structure, et cetera. From what we are told or that we see, any structure change that we do needs to go before town meeting. And as far as we know, the town is trying, I'm not gonna say trying not to have a fall town meeting, a special town meeting. They're trying to keep the structure of a one-time, which means that it won't happen until next May with a town meeting. But there are still things that we can do that doesn't require going before with a warrant, that it would have to be voted on, et cetera. And you know, we're looking at, you know, just as we're talking, getting this group more involved with the other group and, you know, being more supportive, et cetera, in whether it's research or ways that we can move forward. So that's where I think we are right now. And, you know, here again, you know, with Jericho not here to add some of his point of view in on these things also. You know, the other situation we do have, someone asked before about appointments. So the appointments should be, now, you were up, right?
I was up, yeah.
Up, Suzanne and Tara. All right, and I believe there was one applicant,
There was, yeah.
so. Right, so there will be 3 appointed, and, you know, unfortunately, we do have some members that haven't been able to do the time commitment of a once a month meeting that, you know, having a quorum is always my, you know, I hold my breath. So this morning we were waiting for, you know, to have a quorum so we could start the meeting. We had that same situation with CRC, that unfortunately we did not have any applicants, even though I have been told, like, I had 2 people that I really, really tried, spent time with, and the applications didn't come through. And I was told that one just, it fell off his radar to get it in on time and missed the deadline. So what will happen, because there will be open seats, once this group is appointed, they're gonna have to open up the process again to get those. So hopefully we'll have, you know, a full crew. But it is, it's a constant hold my breath to make sure that we can get, our meetings. So.
If they changed the rules, I would join CRC.
I know, and, you know, unfortunately, it was asked, and that rule has not changed, and I don't know what. I guess my next question is, what would be required to get that to change? And that probably would be the town warrant.
What is the rule?
You need to be a voting.
A voting
voting
member in the state.
on
Okay.
you know, on Nantucket. Yeah, and, some don't have that
Yeah, no,
in
I got it.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where we stand with that. Any questions or comments? All right. Jericho isn't here for his report, and you know, I know that he's been busy, and Lexi, I know that you're keeping things afloat, so thank you. And I do know, and actually I'm reminding Sarah, I see you, last night you were wearing a mask, and my first question was, are you well? And it's like, no, the numbers, our COVID numbers are, it's happening on the island, you know, so we still need to have some caution. I don't know what's gonna happen with our vaccination program, because it would be wonderful if that was still available to us, and Nantucket made it very easy to get flu shots and our COVID shots. They don't make RSV possible, you know, easily, but maybe, you know, maybe I shouldn't even worry about that now, you know, COVID and flu, and we don't, I really don't know, and I don't know if Lexi, you know, if any of that is,
Sure.
yeah, so, to be determined, but, we do know the numbers are out there, so take caution, and, you know, Sarah, you were wise last night, we were in a crowd of, you know, what, 500 people and close together for a period of time. And ticks are out there too, I could tell you, ticks are all over. It's amazing, how many ticks this island produces. So we need to be careful there also. So that's that. So this goes on to, item number 9, or it's actually number 11. Community, anything from the community happening? That would be, good for us to know about, or just as an update? Anything at the hospital?
I guess I should say that I have learned since we've last met that we cannot pay for non-emergency medical transportation. And that is really a compliance issue. Historically, I know that that had happened through this department, but that was, I think, quite some time ago, and that was all very kind of earmarked, grant-funded, non-emergency medical transportation. So we remain committed to helping people get where they need to go, and I've been able to do that a couple of times this week with some folks on getting over on Steamship and helping folks get letters for Steamship and so forth. But unfortunately, we can't keep doing what we were doing just very recently with ferry vouchers and the like. So people should be aware of that.
So when you're
And-
saying emergency only, you
Right.
mean a EMS,
Right.
emergency, and so getting chemotherapy is not considered emergency.
Like coming here to the hospital for infusion?
Or needing to go off island for
Right.
those treatments,
Right.
that's not considered emergency.
Correct, correct. It is not.
Yeah,
But there are still, you know, as Sue will probably remind us, there are still all the different funds that we steer people to through NIFRA, through PASCON. There's still a tiny bit left in Sailing Stork. And there's another one that I'm just blanking on at the moment, but there are those funds. So Sue, feel free.
Thank you. So yeah, for specifically for people needing off-island cancer treatment, and it's very specific to cancer, the Marla Lamb Fund that is administered through PASCON is still open to anyone who needs assistance. It's a reimbursement program. So if you need to stay at a hotel and you're having surgery, and you can be reimbursed for those costs, and we can assist with ferry tickets, but it's very specific towards off-island cancer care. And it does help with, like, if you need to bring your spouse with you, like it covers them as well.
I also assume that all of these funds have they're not endless. And
Right.
there's a limit, and thus the needing for funding from grants, different fundraising opportunities, which we are currently in that season. Everyone is doing their major fundraising, and each and one of these organizations has a very legitimate base. Unfortunately, hopefully people are coming with deep pocketbooks for some of these opportunities. Which
I want to, oh, sorry. I
Go
wanted to commend, I believe Sarah is at least partially responsible for the utterly needed and ridiculously overlooked issue that the bus didn't go to the hospital. So thank you, Sarah, for whatever you did to encourage that to happen, because it never even occurred to me that the bus never stopped at the hospital, because that was such a no-brainer. And apparently that's not true. It needed a brain. And so, so thank you.
No, I
for
appreciate
this.
that. That was actually someone else's request. Someone who's no longer at the hospital raised that point a few months back, but definitely people are using those buses, which is really helpful. I've gone out, you know, I I will take a walk midday or something and I see them all the time. But when they stop, I talk with the drivers and I've asked them, you know, are you keeping data on this? And the drivers have assured me they are. And I just called the patient the other day who missed an appointment, but didn't realize that one of those two fixed route bus lines, you know, goes right up her street, comes right into the hospital. So she quickly rescheduled. So that was great. One thing that you should know, and I talked to Randy Elms about this the other day, if you go on to NERDA's website and you click on the maps for the Mid-Island Loop and the Maya Comet route, the maps don't yet show the buses coming into the hospital, but he told me they're working on that. So yeah, no, I think it's really been helpful. I think it's really been helpful. So
I happened to be at the hospital over the past couple of weeks and noticed the bus coming in and people getting off and also people getting on. So,
right.
that, it seems like a little tiny thing, but I think it has had a major impact. And,
Yeah.
you know, also, the fact that, you know, and it goes into a different area, but you know, kudos to the Wave and NERDA that able to make that change, but then also having free buses.
Right.
The ridership is up. And, you know, we're trying to get people from going into town with cars. We have no space for anything. It took me, I almost was late for this, just getting across, and of course I have a car outside. It's just ridiculous, but by having free Wave buses has upped ridership and, just one of the, things I'm following New York City, what happened in one of the, our mayor candidate, that was just made it through the primary, one of his thing is to have free buses in New York City, and everyone says, oh, it can't happen. Well, it can happen. If it's happening here, it can happen there too. And you encourage people to take it when you remove some of the barriers.
Mhm. Yeah, we are
But-
so grateful to NERDA and I think it does make a big difference for a lot of people who, you know, whatever their other previous access or means of getting here, whether or not those they still have access to that transportation. I do think, to your point, Veronica, just because of the increased congestion or increased traffic here, people have told me they'd rather take the bus now because they don't have to, you know, jockey for a parking space and all the rest of that. So
One
it is
hour
really
parking,
helpful.
1 hour parking, 2 hour parking, and, you know, the community officers are out in force with those tickets, you know, so.
Yep.
If you could find a spot. I'd like to bring up, one other thing, that has become, it is now very much public information, but, the food pantry needs a new home. And, there are a number of things that are happening. There's a special fund that has been set up with Community Foundation that is going to be holding any donations just for Find the Pantry a New Home Fund. And there was a nice press release that was picked up in, the Inky last week. And, in addition to that, there's also the Interfaith Council, who is the, holder of the, not-for-profit, for, NIFRA. You know, they are not in, in tune with doing major fundraising such as that gets done by Mariah Mitchell, by Fairwinds, by many of the organizations, you know, even Nisha. So there is a newly formed group, and there is actually a event by invitation. That is not a necessarily a pay to go, but we're trying to get people that are influential that can donate to this cause. And you know, the situation is dire. The location that exists, that by next spring, we need to be out of there. The town owns that building, and actually what's happening with, you know, talking about our bus system, the bus is taking over that entire building with their new, new routes, new, electric buses, et cetera, et cetera. So, that space, which has been made adequate, which it really is not adequate, is going to be going away. And, so there's, you'll see a number of press releases. We're also looking that if anyone is interested in penning some letters to the editor, we just need to make this much, we need to scream it from the top of the rooftops. You know, you see Pippin Acre does their boxes, which is funded from part of the sales of, when you go to Pippin Acre, that they've, at 80 boxes, they know that there's more people. That is supplemental. You know, the food pantry is probably serving about 350 family units over the course of a week, and that goes up and down. So the need is here, and the need is great. And if there isn't a home for the food pantry, I think it will cause a hole in this community. You know, some of the things that have been happening there also with the deportation sweep that happened last month. We have some families that are not comfortable, even though we don't share information, we don't, you know. So we are doing some deliveries that are, I'm gonna say, anonymous deliveries. So people will be able to get food, but, you know, that all is pending on having a home to be able to do this in, and also the funds to be able to provide food. So, you know, all the, you know, I'm looking and thinking, you know, transportation, what used to be there isn't there anymore. Housing is still a major issue on this island. And, you know, you hear weekly people that are leaving the island or are desperate for a place to live. You know, food, health, et cetera. So, you know, our needs are great. And we're very fortunate that we are in fundraising season, and we do have wonderful people that love the island as much as we all do. They may be seasonal, they may be visitors, but, we're fortunate that they come with the checkbook, and, that helps, so. Anything else? On that? Sue?
I just wanted to point out and remind folks that the Warming Places summer program runs on Mondays. Every Monday at Summer Street Church at noon. There's lunch, there's gift cards to various resources on island and referrals for assistance to our partners. So we welcome anyone that you think is in need. We're not providing shelter at this time of year, but we are still meeting with people and connecting them with resources. So send
Is it-
anyone you think you need.
Is it ultimately a plan, if funding exists, to extend the shelter into a bigger part of the year?
Our long-term plan is to hopefully find our own space so that we have more control over what services we can offer and when. I think I'll leave it at that. There's a
Yeah.
lot of complications in offering year-round shelter. And we are currently focused on our original mission, which was to get people out of the cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
That it was more of a life-saving emergency program.
Because I know that those folks don't go off island during the
No.
warm weather. They're here, and fortunately, you do offer Mondays that they can come in and get some services, et cetera.
Right,
So
and
thank-
and supplies, like we have
Right.
rain ponchos and tents and all kinds of things.
Thank you. Tara, your hand was up?
Yeah, a question about, we had talked about a couple of, maybe it was last meeting, the meeting before, we were talking about kind of setting up a table at the farmer's market in town and potentially sharing that with some of our community partners. What is the status of that? Because, you know, as we're talking about all of these things, you know, I mean, you now have a captive audience of particularly visitors and seasonal residents that, you know, and obviously year-round residents who go to the farmers market all the time. And you know, I just think that there is a real opportunity, particularly when you talk about, you know, NIFRA and the Interfaith Council not really you know, not really having this big public fundraising and, you know, that event, that it could be an opportunity to, you know, really get the word out about, you know, about the programs. So I wanted to know the status of that, and I will also just make a comment that I remember that we'd had a conversation a long time ago. I mean, this is probably over a year ago, about using about the donations at Stop and Shop going to the food pantry. And I noticed, and I've been very happy because I remember in the past, I think it was the month of May. And now it's June. I don't know how long that's going to be extended, but I'm hopeful because I hit it every time. My husband jokes, how do I always have a bill that ends in 00? I'm like, yes, because I buy everything that ends in but you know, that hopefully we'll do a little better there. But you know, there's some of this awareness that I think we could, you know, even if you say to people, hopefully, I mean, I don't know what the end date is for the donations, but if we were able to at the at the farmers market, explain to people, oh, you know, when you go to Stop and Shop and it's asking, well, this is exactly where that money is going to. You know, this is where that roundup dollar is going to. You know, those kinds of things. I think we need to be a little bit, you know, if we have the opportunity, it would be great to do it.
Right. The funds that Stop and Shop is rounding up for the month of June, it is Stop and Shop programs. Some of that will
Yeah.
come to food pantry, and it will also be going to other food insecurity on the island, so it's being split. But I apologize, I dropped the ball on the table with town. I just made a note. I will make that call this afternoon to see when we could get that, and I'm thinking that there is some coordination, and I'll talk with Jericho on that, but if we, you know, have it that it's available, we can get a table. We can offer it as a rotating thing for different organizations, or just have, you know, 2 or 3 people just sit there and talk about what they have. So I will follow up on that, and I apologize, I completely dropped the ball on that one. I said I would do that. So thank you for the reminder.
No problem.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Yes, Sarah?
You're on mute, Sarah.
Sorry, one last thing. Because I know Sue, you just mentioned food security. So I think people are generally familiar, but maybe not everyone is knowledgeable about the Sunbucks program
Mhm.
that basically, you know, gives like $40 per kid or $120 through the summer. If families are already receiving SNAP benefits. That's because the kids are out of school, so they don't have access to those meals, but just if we can make a note of that, that we should just, you know, be knowledgeable and help people if you know, it may at the food pantry and elsewhere, if they're not aware of it. That's it.
That just reminds me of something, you know, I would like to, at one of our meetings, invite people from the Family Resource Center. Because the Family Resource Center really has involvement with so many of these different programs. We don't get, and I believe because how they're structured financially, we don't get direct applications from them for grants because they are under a different umbrella that would be applying for them, but they do so many wonderful things that I would love to hear more and that we could all learn a little bit more because they are involved with everything that we're really talking. They serve families in need. So I'd like to put that on the list of future things to do.
They're also state funded.
Mhm.
It's a mandate in the state to have one in each county. So that's the other reason why they're not out there fundraising.
Right. Exactly. Alrighty, any new business? We do, as far as new business, it'll be appointing, you know, our crew for coming up, and in July, it will be time to, have a vote for chair and co-chair. I'm gonna just throw this out there, I, am going to be out of the country for a couple of months next year, from November through the end of January. I will have Zoom with me and, I'll be very willing to get on a Zoom call at 4 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock. I'm gonna be in Australia for a couple of months. I have a grandchild being born in November and we're going to hopefully be there to participate in that birth and spend a few months. I am just throwing it out there that, I, may want to turn over the chair, you know, if there's someone interested and, but, you know, I will continue to participate and I will do everything I can, but knowing that I'm not gonna physically be here, I'm feeling, a bit, that's why I just want to mention it, all right? So, with, no other new business, we are, Amanda left the meeting at 1:06. She had to get off to work, so we cannot close our meeting, so the first thing that we will do, we can adjourn, so at the next meeting, the first thing we have to do is to close the meeting. So, with that, can say, can't believe 4th of July is right around the corner. So happy 4th of July. And happy, it's summer already. Just go into town, even without all of the festival people here or whatever, it is definitely, overnight it happens. And so it's wonderful. We embrace all of our visitors. It's what makes us to have the potential for this wonderful place we live in. So they bring need for more resources, but they also bring, everything along with them. So we appreciate that. So,
Veronica.
yes.
I think we have a date for the next meeting.
oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, it says next date meeting, so if we can look at the calendar, thank you, Lexi, on that. We've been doing the 4th, which will be June 24th.
Mhm. July.
Excuse me, July 24th, thank you, July 24th. I know that we've been meeting at 4 o'clock, and maybe we need to wait until, July to see if there's a better time for meeting, you know, et cetera. I'm looking to see when we can get most people available to participate, but we probably should hold that to 4 o'clock on the 24th, if that works. All right, so our next meeting will be the 24th of June, and by that time, the appointments will be made, and on that agenda will be new elections, et cetera. So
Great.
have a great day, everyone. Happy July
Thank
4th.
you.
And
You too.
Thank you for your time. All right,
Thank you.
Thanks all.
be well.
Stay safe.
All right.
Thank you. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye.
Bye.